Good afternoon, everyone. Thanks for coming to this PISM seminar. The seminar is going to be about the use of social media in conflicts, and we've chosen two case studies for a conflict, the one in Ukraine and the one in Syria. These are, in fact, two seminal conflicts. Let's hope only of this decade. Let's hope it's not a century-long seminal. These are not seminal conflicts for the century. But apart from the two conflicts, we will also deal with a seminal tool, with a medium, that is the social media. We have great speakers here with us to talk to you today. I am Patrycja Sasnal. I head the Middle East and North Africa project at the Institute, and together with Anna Maria Dyner, we will be co-moderating this session. So, Anna, would you like to introduce Anastasia?
Thank you, Patrycja, very much. And as Patrycja told, I am here in PISM, the coordinator of Eastern European Program. First of all, thank you both of us to be here with us. I think that the subject is very important, not only from the Polish point of view, but also from Russian and Israeli point of view, especially that Syrian conflict touches also Russia and Israel, and maybe not Poland, but in some way also. So I will introduce Anastasia Sergeyeva from the Association for Free Russia from Poland. Anastasia is a board member of this association. She graduated from St. Petersburg State University, Political Science Department, worked as a campaign manager, politizer and party manager in Russia. For many years, Anastasia has worked for International Republic Institute. Her experience covered different fields of political analysis and campaigning. And in 2015, Anastasia joined the Association for Free Russia, which goal is to support democratic movement in Russia and to bring changes to political system of the country. And in some minutes, I also will ask Anastasia about how Russia is using its propaganda, not only in the media like television or how to say regular internet sources, but also sources like social media, for instance, not only Facebook, but because it's not the most popular social medium in Russia, but are rather websites like Vkontakte or Odnoklassniki. Thank you.
Right, and apart from Anastasia, we have, Orit Perlov, who's the social media analyst at the Institute for National Security Studies in Israel, and she's come to us from Israel directly, so it's good to have you with us. Thanks. Orit analyzes the discourse on the social networks in the Arab states. She speaks Arabic, and prior to joining the INSS, she was posted in the Arab states in the Gulf, as I understand. So you're the Israeli who not only speaks Arabic but also travels to Arab countries, which is not so usual these days, is it? She is also the former co-editor of the Israeli Foreign Ministry website in Arabic. That's a big thing.
My first position was in Jordan. Sorry.
Right.
Yeah. They told me green.
Yeah.
Okay. Now you can. My first position was in Jordan. That's where I established the internet site for the Foreign Ministry. Yeah.
Right.
So it was interesting. Yeah.
Orit, I think we could start maybe with Syria, as it is now on the first pages probably everywhere. I have a couple of points that I would like to ask you prior to your presentation, hoping that maybe sometime during this presentation you're going to address them.
Yes.
Yeah, so social media has become an important source of information, both in dissemination, in disseminating information, but also in reception, right? People get information from social media. Can you tell us how the government in Damascus, if it is, and how it is using the social media? How is the opposition to the Syrian regime using social media, including Daesh? And are they the masters of social media usage, as we are being told. Today there was this horrific blast in Istanbul, and Turkey is known for fluctuating when it comes to the perpetrators of these attacks. And I wonder how Turkey, if Turkey is using social media in dissemination of a specific message when it comes to Syria, Daesh, maybe the Kurdish issue in Syria as well. And as much as we know that social media cannot be controlled in its totality, is this image that we get from social media very much distorted? How is it distorted? Can you describe the distortion of the message that we get from the social media when it comes to the Syrian conflict? And do these actors in the conflict, how do they make sure that a specific message gets through if it is uncontrollable and has this anarchistic element to it? And finally, sorry, I know, but
you'll remind me if I forget.
Yeah, sure. But I just want, by asking these questions, I am hoping to sort of lay the ground for the discussion, so that you know also what problems come to mind when it comes to the conflict in Syria. I wonder what the connection between social media and mainstream media, global mainstream media, is when it comes to the conflict in Syria. So, for instance, we have one source of information which seems a predominant one. That is the Syrian Observatory of Human Rights. And many mainstream media in the world, even the BBC, often base or corroborate their information on the basis of the info that they get from this observatory. And as much as I understand, this institution gets much of its information from the social media. So is this information reliable in the end? Enlighten us.
Okay, so the most important, first of all, thank you so much for having me here, and I hope it's going to be interesting. But I'll say a few things before we even start the presentation to give you the framework and what I do and what I don't do, because to be honest, my job is to listen to trend analysis of discourse of society. I don't do government and I don't do terror organization. I decided to listen to the public, society in the Arab world, and to understand what are they talking about. What are they talking about? Terrorist organization, but I don't listen to the terrorists. I'm not inside closed circles of forum of terrorist organization, but I know what the public is talking about. So that's one thing. But I'll show all of you what I do and what I don't do, and how can we know what we know from Syria, from my position. The second thing, I researched only 22 Arab states. Now I have almost 60 entities. When I started 5 years ago, I had 22 Arab states. Today, because of so many civil wars, we have so many entities. We don't have Libya, but we have Benghazi and Tripoli and Sirte and Dana. And in Syria, so we have Khaleb and we have Damascus, but we have Deir ez-Zor and Raqqa, and each one speak about different things. So I have a lot of entities, but since I don't speak Turkish and I don't speak Persian, I won't be able to speak about Turks in a professional way, and I won't be able to give the Iranian side, only Arab, and how does it look. But I hope from the presentation, we're going to see images of Erdogan and how Syrians perceived what Erdogan, or Arabs and Syrians, thinks about the position of Turkey in what we see in Syria. And again, this is the first time I'm doing this presentation, so you are the police. I have no idea how long it's going to take, but feel free to stop it whenever we're moving, okay, forward, and so on. And of course, if something is not clear, you can ask, but if not, let's wait to the Q&As, and then I'll try to answer. We have this. Now, one in this one. Okay, so I'll give a little bit background. I think that what we do, I'll give a little bit background about the tools, what we see in Syria, the numbers a little bit, and what tools do I use to understand what's happening in Syria. Then we'll move a little bit. I know the name of this session is about propaganda and fact, but I was asked what is the use of social media in Syria. So other than propaganda, we have other uses of social media in Syria, and I'll try to show you. We'll start a little bit about how the Syrians are documenting the horrors they're taking in Syria. 5 years of civil wars, almost 250,000 deaths, and we will see a little bit. I'll be tough with you. I'm going to show you difficult images that coming from Syria, not only propaganda. And after that, I'll talk a little bit. I'll show you about ISIS, how they use social media in Syria. We'll move fast because it's not, again, yes, propaganda, but also logistics and branding and so on. We'll see a few examples of that. And then, since we live in a time of, of perception and images, and sometimes it's more important than facts, because that's what people see, I'll show you a little bit how, from small cartoons, we can understand the difference between ISIS and Assad, what's Turkey roles in this, what's Russian, how they see the Russians' role in it, a little bit about, the opposition, the Syrian opposition role of it. And I can tell you, I know it's not Hollywood, but Hollywood is very much in Syria. And we're going to see the face, how Darth Vader is looking from the Syrian side. We are going to talk about the 50 Shades of Grey of moderation in Syria. And unfortunately, we will talk about the Hunger Game in Syria from a different direction, not from Hollywoodic one. So let's start about my tools. 8 hours a day, that's what I do. You can see here YouTube, Facebook, Twitter, and WhatsApp. This year, WhatsApp becoming, I think, the #1 social media tool in Syria for sure, and I'll tell you exactly why. But one, giving us the images, the video, the rough material of ISIS, but also, and we'll see how a chemical use of, chemical weapons look like when it's being used, how starvation looks like, but we can get all this visualization for YouTube, and also how they burning pilots, but also on YouTube. Then Facebook is extremely important, but in the regard of Syria, yes, there's any organization today, it not exist without a Facebook page. Also, everything concerning the refugees in Syria, when they want to travel out, they're trying to escape. Once again, a lot of Facebook groups are being made to help, to facilitate, unfortunately, for trafficking of refugees in Syria. So if you want to know the routes where the refugees are heading, this is your tool. If you want to get the images and the documentation of what's happening in Syria, YouTube is your tool. If you want Twitter, Twitter is an important tool because this is the only tool that you have two directions of conversations coming from Syria. Also, public message and political message coming through Twitter, and anonymity is a very strong side of Twitter, and that's why also ISIS is a great fan of Twitter. Twitter works, and we'll see about it, as a mutation. So they succeed, social media succeed to kill many pages on Facebook, Friendrika, and other accounts. Almost impossible to do it on Twitter, because every account you close, another 1,000 and hundreds of thousands are being created. And that's why you'll ask me probably about how can we counter incitement or ISIS use of social media. We can reduce the time, almost impossible to kill Twitter today. Erdogan tried very much to kill Twitter after Gezi Park. Instead of 35% of Turks using social media, today you have 60%. So here's your answer. Regarding WhatsApp, why WhatsApp is so important? Because today you'll ask every refugee who sits in Europe regarding if they prefer food or WhatsApp, they'll tell you WhatsApp, because this is the only tools they have today to communicate with their family, no matter where they are. Whether they are in refugees camp, and we're talking about 4 million refugees who sit in Jordan, Lebanon, and in Turkey. The reason you're having now so many refugees, and we'll get there, is because it's impossible anymore for Jordan and for Lebanon to get more refugees. They have 1.5 million refugees already. It's almost a fifth of their population. Just imagine if Canada will enter the USA. This is what happened to Lebanon and to Jordan. So that's why they're now going to Europe. So that's a little bit about my tools and why they're important. And you can see here, this is from 2015. 98% of Syrians who are using social media are using WhatsApp. Win big time, as you can see, even past Facebook. You can see here even Google and Twitter and YouTube. So just to show you a little bit about the percentage of use. We don't know, you can take a picture of that, okay? feel free. We don't know, it's okay. We don't know the exact number, how many people using inside of Syria social media, because there is a ban and a lot of, trying to censor social media inside of Syria times and times on. But I would say something between 10 to 12% are still actively using social media. I think I'm trying to think if I'll show you this one first. Yeah, because you asked me. So who are the six groups, 7 groups that using, when we're talking about Syrian, who are using social media? So the first one is activists, journalists, and HR, human rights organization, are still inside Syria and reporting about what's happening on the ground. Another group that are reporting from Syria, Syrian living in the diaspora, people who succeed to flee and telling us, communicating with their family, whether in Damascus, Khaleb, and so on, and are reporting what do they know about what's going on in Syria. We also have the rebels. Rebels, we are talking about today 157 different group of rebels inside the Sunni territories, a huge number. So whoever thinks that the day after we're going to see democracy, probably not. But rebels, as you ask, a big source of information regarding what's happening in Syria. Also, as we all know, the Islamic State, ISIS, using a lot of social media from within Syria. Their media arm is huge. I always say that the media arm is even more important than the actual fighter on the ground. And we'll see about it. We have the pro-Assad camp that's sending a lot of propaganda out, unfortunately, and I'll tell you who I'm following and who's not, but also a source for information from within Syria, most of it from the west side, the territory under Assad control. You also have the Kurdish in the north, from the northwest to the northeast of Syria. Also many groups, social media, if you want to know about them and about their rebels and so on, groups, you can find it on social media in big numbers. And as I said, refugees. Refugees in the Middle East, refugees in Europe and outside, all of them, social media, and they providing information about what's happening on the ground. I personally, when I do my research, I'm researching the first group of people, which is the activist, journalist, and HR. I have direct communication with them. I do have communication with Syrian who's living abroad in the diaspora. I also research rebel group, but I don't communicate with rebel groups. I learn about them from the population within Syria. Same thing about ISIS. I don't get into ISIS account, but I follow ISIS from what the public Syrian thinking about their work in Syria and about what Arabs, how they perceived what ISIS doing in Syria. I don't absolutely follow pro-government account. You need, unfortunately, you need to choose if you want to be with the activists or you need to be with the government. I always choose the people. So I cannot hold the rope in two ends, and that's why I don't follow pro-Assad account. Also, a little bit about the Kurdish, but not so much. And yes, I listen to many conversations of refugees and know exactly how they're doing what they do. Now we'll go a little bit about social media and why it's so important. As I said, today 12% are using social media in Syria, but in the Arab world, 350 million Arabs. A third of this population is using social media. 90 million Arabs are using these tools. It's by far the largest human library exists today in the world. And regarding information, when we're talking about the use of social media, so the first thing they're using social media is communication. 7 times more people today in the Middle East have communication tools than transportation tools. Meaning it's easier to, 7 times it's easier to communicate than to move from a place to place. Of course, when we are talking about the states who are under a civil war. So communication, after that, information. This is the largest source of information exists if you want to know about what's happening on the ground. And after that, only in 3rd place, propaganda. 4th place, entertainment information on social media. It's the only place in the world today when you don't have borders. It doesn't exist on social media, and that's why ideas can run completely virally on social media. Ideas can start in Raqqa, move to Belgium, move to Paris, with 140 characters. You cannot stop, censor, and bury ideas, whether they are constructive or destructive idea. They run freely, almost impossible to stop them. We know when they start, and we don't know when and where it's going to root in. It's the only tool in the Middle East who has full transparency, full accessibility. Everything is for free, the information still. It's the only equalizing and democratic tool exists in the Middle East. If outside of social media, we cannot listen to women voices, minority voices, youth voices. The only place we can find their voices and their interpretation of the reality is on social media. It's the majority of the Middle East. We cannot find them outside of social media. The only place we can find them is social media. One more thing it's important to say, as I said, it's work as a mutation. So everything that we can kill the internet, until now nobody succeeds and knows how. You can kill people, you can kill institutions, you can bomb almost everything. Internet is still alive and kicking. And you'll close account, you'll close everything, they will find a way and find more and more accounts will pop out. So even borders, fences cannot protect us in a place where no borders. That's why, as I said, ideas will come from Syria. And if you think that Europe are protected because of borders, because of an ocean, we saw that it's not happening. They're coming from within, no need. I mean, and it's very difficult to stop it. Now a little bit about, as I said, about the first part, which is documenting the horrors. I'll show you, I think, 3 images coming from Syria, and it's not propaganda, it's reality in Syria. What you see here is it's not the first time that the regime used chemical weapons, but this is the first time they use a sarin gas, which is a lethal chemical weapons. In Douma, 1,400 people got killed. The pictures that you see here, it's real. It's fact, it's not propaganda. And that was then what you see here. And I was sitting in my house in Tel Aviv, and this is why it's also intelligence revolution, because in the past, you know, the population was protected. We didn't see, in the past people were be able, I don't know if it changed so much, but people were, I mean, gassed, and you'll see the starving part, and we could say we didn't know about it. Today, everything exposed to everything. We see the picture. We can, unfortunately, we don't act upon it as in the past, but we can see everything is taking place, and you can see here 2 hours later, YouTube, Twitter was full of those pictures coming from Syria. The head of State Department, Kerry, even used those images when he went in August 2014 to the White House trying to explain why there has to be an operation in Syria, which didn't happen then. But he uses the images from YouTube because in today's world, the public becoming more and more involved in the decision making. In the past, you could go to war without showing proof about use of chemical weapons. In today's words, you need to show your public why you're going to war. Even though you can do it anyway, but you feel obliged, politicians here to have and feel obliged to show those pictures. And you can see from the campaign, this is after the chemical attack in Isrota, many campaign against it. As you can see, you can kill in one day, yes, if the world is busy just drawing red lines. Because in the Middle East, there is a lot of red lines and nobody is enforcing them. A little bit more about how the viral campaigns looks like. This has happened in Douma, in Isrota. Another thing that is reality in Syria, and as I said, Madaya is starving. Hunger is not a game in Syria. There's a lot of places under siege in Syria, and what you can see here is the latest one. The government saying that they're sending aid. From the picture I see, they're not getting flour and food. Unfortunately, and this is, I can tell you from my own perspective, I would love to see Israel sending aid and dropping aid from the air. I think it's important, and it's important to know that these things are happening. Madaya is in a place under the government control area, not on the rebel side, but there are places under the rebel side also starving. It's not something that we are seeing only under Assad control area. But this is the latest campaign, so you can see from social media. I'm just showing you how those viral campaign looks like. But again, you can see here Obama and Putin and Nasrallah and Assad, and they're in charge of this starving taking place in Syria. And you see the mocking, how Syrians are mocking them. Another picture that in the past we could never see regarding Syrians, but this is from the refugees in Lebanon. You can see here the refugees came in Arsal. There were 14 terror attacks inside Lebanon. Most of them came from this city of Arsal, and that's why the military, the army, got into the camps and made a cleansing. Why do I showing this? Because in the past, again, the government could control the information coming outside. Today, the monopoly got broke, and I can sit in Tel Aviv here, in Warsaw, and see these images live on social media. In the past, we couldn't see those pictures happening. So just to give you another example. Again, one more thing that we're getting from social media is numbers. Somebody, and it's not all 100% facts. I can say, I don't know that if, within a civil war, if it's even possible to be one-on-one with the numbers of casualties, no matter who's counting and who's reporting, it's never 100% true. But you can see here the number. The majority, what you can see here, and this is why I always explain that the majority of refugees coming from not everybody here think that majority coming from an ISIS control area, but the majority of refugees coming from Assad control areas, more than 85% are coming from there because barrel bombs are more killing than knives. And that's why majority of the refugees that you have in Europe at the moment is coming from those areas, from Halep, from Damascus, and from the surrounding. We can see how many civilians are being killed. You can see the numbers, no need to repeat. But also from social media, a lot of groups are reporting about the numbers. So we can follow. I don't know if it's 100%. We are now stopped on almost 250,000 deaths. I guess we'll know the real numbers later on when this war, civil war, will end. Not during, but still counting, documenting the numbers. So that's one use of social media to show us, to give us some impression what happened on the ground in Syria while this civil, very bloody civil war is taking place next to us. Now we'll move a little bit. I call it orange is the new black. What can I do? That's the color they used. And we'll see a little bit about the Islamic State propaganda. We'll go about it. So ISIS had three aims regarding social media. One is recruit, the other one is to radicalize, and the third one is to raise funds. And they use social media for all three means, and we'll see a little bit how. I'll talk a little bit more about the propaganda and the recruit, less about how they do the raising funds. And they also use it, as I said, for logistic and communication within their fighters. So I'll start with this. Probably all of you were exposed to this. This is one of their probably most known propaganda video that they had of the burning pilot, the Jordanian burning pilot. And I'll tell you a few things about, I call it the corner of Hollywood and Mecca. Because that's what happened when, tools, technology from the 21st century, movies from the 21st century meeting ideology from the 7th century, and that's how it looks like. They're taking the kicks and action into the reality. We usually see in Hollywood burning cars. Here it's people. But this video was broadcast for 7 minutes. YouTube succeeded to reduce the time of the broadcasting from 15 minutes into 7 minutes. But 7 minutes on social media, it's a lifetime. In the time that they broadcast this video, 150 million Arabs watched it. No Hollywood movie with high budget succeed to reach such an audience. By the way, the two beheading of the American journalist, also in Raqqa, 94% of Americans were exposed to this. No Hollywood movie with high budget. So in today's world, with social media, you can maximize your fear factor with minimum cost and logistic, and less is more regarding what social media does. One more thing that, as I said, this is one example how they use it. They have two huge production, Furqan and Al Khayat, and they know how to maximize the use and how to terrorize. Is not only terror attacks. You can terrorize people and kids, because when you bring those smartphones into your house, and today our kids 13, 14 years old are exposed to those images, some trying to mimic this, and sometimes are feeling more and more insecure when they see it. Once again, ISIS beheading. Again, all of us are exposed to it. And here, as I told you, Dark Vader meeting John the Jihadist. Same thing. You can see the images, and you can see many Syrians doing those. You know, they put one next to each other, and we're taking from Hollywood those images, those heroes. Unfortunately, we need villains, not only heroes, and that's how they come to life in the Middle East. The target killing took one, and immediately we already heard that we're having another John the Jihadist, another guy from Britain that replaced him. So again, kids 16 years old, 8 to 18, that's the images they want to see. ISIS know it best. They know how to create all this PlayStation game, and we'll see it, and how to use it. Again, as I said, already been replaced. Young kids already, the cubes are very much in their videos. Again, ISIS as a branding. We see the coins, we see the rings, they have passport, already cartoons. They know how to maximize the, you know, those tools to create the best brand that exists today in the Middle East. I don't think that any government knows to use those tools as good as they do. Because we need to say they're lacking the numbers, they're lacking the technology. I mean, they don't have advanced weapons, and they don't have a lot of numbers as fighters. And putting that, and they are maybe 1% within the Muslim society, the Sunni Muslim society. And saying that, they're still affecting each one of us, and everybody's talking about them. So I guess they're doing something correctly. And even if they're losing the battlefield on the ground, they're winning the battlefield of, you know, the media. Again, you can see how they affect even the Simpsons. And if Al-Qaeda in 2001 created the effect and the coalition with the two twin towers, you see what ISIS did, you know, with the two beheading of the two journalists. What the use of chemical weapons didn't succeed to do, unfortunately, this one already succeeded to create the coalition needed for the West. You all know about the magazine. They have already a lot of magazines spreading, very viral. They speak and they're using social media in 24 languages. They have a media arm, very, very advanced one, and we are completely losing this war. Anyway, now a little bit about communication and logistics. You can see here, I'll just take you for a little tour. What you see on the top is Zalo. This is the way the fighter can communicate and do logistic within the tunnels, underground. They take phones, they put down, you know, the application of Zello, and phones becoming walkie-talkies. Another thing they use is Ask FM when they try to recruit jihadists from Europe. You can ask them anything. What is your everyday life will look like? Sometimes their media arm doesn't even need to be in Syria and Iraq. You can sit in your own state and help them operate this arm from Europe. We know that the third place ISIS fan club sits is in the United States. So you have Syria, you have Iraq, but then United States and then Saudi. So they don't need to operate from within the territorial place. You can see here the question and the answer. And Frederica was another platform that they use ISIS to communicate with their people. It was down, and you know they succeed to take it down, but they use other platform, as you can see, Facebook, of course, and Twitter, all for communication and logistic, not only for propaganda. What you see here again, tweet of war, the dawn of glad tidings. They also operate a lot of We're calling it the tweet of war. They replace the drum of war with tweet of war. And every time they want to occupy a place, they already have a lot of application. Once you subscribe, with a lot of game and video game, once you subscribe to those applications, you give your Twitter account, they're having your Twitter accounts. And once they want to occupy a city and so on, what we saw in Mosul, in Raqqa, in Tikrit, they immediately occupy those Twitter account and sending a lot of message of, you know, sometimes one word and so on to scare the community and the people who live. They target the people who live in the place where they want to occupy. Those people see a lot of tweets about we're coming, we're heading towards you. I remember before the Paris attack, a lot of video, a lot of communication regarding Paris. I can tell you here that the next target is Saudi already, because I see how they're preparing the ground for it. But you can see it very much viral, and then they don't need to come with a lot of members. They came to Mosul with numbers between 400 and 1,000 people. That's how they occupy Mosul, because many just take their legs and ran. It was so scary, everybody's running. And then it's easier for them to occupy the geographical, but what you see here is one of the application in Arabic is Fajr al-Bashair, but in English is Dawn of Glad Tiding. Google Play already took it down. They're using a lot of GoPro cameras to, you know, to illustrate real war games, because that's what the today's generation, the Z generation, not even the Y generation, loves. Men. Only women, which is fantastic to explain men wars, but they like all their war game and so on. Now we'll move. I think that will be fascinating, and we'll finish with that. I'll go very fast, I think, because it's images, it will be very fast. I'll show you a little bit how small cartoon and big messages. I'll start with Assad, and you can see how many Syrians see him within Syria. You know, I don't need to explain it. I think it's all very clear. But something is extremely clear. You can see here from the Twitter. It is impossible to convince Syrian majority to help you to fight their secondary enemy and forget their primary and worst prosecutor, which is Assad. So whoever thinks that it will be possible to finish ISIS and not the other side, Assad, it's absolutely impossible. Syrian will never fight ISIS before Assad will go. And you can see here from the cartoons, it's two heads of the same hydra. You won't be able to take one head without taking care of the other head. And in the case of the Syrian, the primary enemy is Assad and not ISIS. A little bit about all against all, as you can see from the cartoons. Some were laughing about, you know, 8 o'clock US strike, 8:54 Russian strike, 9:30 French strike, 10 o'clock British strike. That's how Syria looks today. You see how the air force is looking like. Everybody is against everybody. It's extremely to understand who's against who in Syria, and everybody's fighting everybody. But nobody, I can tell you, is fighting ISIS. I think we can see it here, even though this is the Putin. Does Russia really fight ISIS? So I'll tell you a little bit who's fighting ISIS and who's not fighting ISIS. I mean, Russia's saying they're fighting ISIS, but they are fighting the rebels. And we'll see it in a second here. This is, what you see in the yellow is where Russia is bombing. This is ISIS, okay? This is the rebels. So you can see from here, this is from 2014, 2015 already. Russia is fighting the rebels. They are not fighting ISIS almost. And every place the opposition lose, ISIS is entering in, not Assad. So you, again, I can demonstrate it. Again, you can see from the red, this is Russia airstrikes. This is ISIS. So you can see where is the majority of the airstrikes are taking place. So this is Russia. But not only Russia. Is Turkey is fighting ISIS? Well, the answer is no. Turkey is basically fighting the PKK. Okay? And what you can see from the program, what you can see on social media, not only they're not fighting ISIS, but they're buying ISIS oil. And the majority, and we need to be honest, the majority of, I mean, when we look who's buying ISIS oil, first of all, it's domestic use. Many inside Syria are buying the ISIS oil before anybody else. But yes, the regime is buying ISIS oil because it's cheap. And Turkey is buying ISIS oil because it's cheap. And Iraqis are buying, the Kurds even, buying ISIS oil because it's cheap. As you can see from the cartoons, again, regarding if Erdogan is really fighting ISIS, I think the cartoon speaking for themselves. He's even saying it's okay as long as they keep killing Kurds. You can see about ISIS. And again, Assad, once again, you can, this is the Turks. Once again, you can see Kurds, they fighting the Kurds, not ISIS. And again, how they see Putin a little bit. They call him the bear because he's not a you're not a gentleman. He doesn't say what he's doing. And you see how in the Middle East they can see the Russia role inside Syria from the cartoons here. And you can see how ISIS, CIA, everybody, the rebels are fighting. This is a little bit of, I would say, even a perception inside the Middle East, how everybody's hiding from the Russians. I don't know if, and again, probably it's not the fact, and if you ask me, it's going to be a muddy thing for Russia, what's going on in Syria. I'm not sure they're going to, I'm definitely not sure they're going to win the war in Syria. I would call it a second Afghanistan for them. They can take their, legs and leave, but then Assad will go immediately. And then it's easy to start wars. It's much more difficult to end them, of course, in the Middle East. A little bit about the red line and about, Russia and Obama. So there's a lot of laugh in the Middle East regarding Obama. He's putting Obama's red line and how Russia red line looks like. Somebody told me that it doesn't matter what Putin will say in the UN, because when you have your tanks in Ukraine and you have your airplane in Syria and you have Obama in the White House, then Putin can do whatever he wants to do. You can see here from the cartoons, Obama and Putin, the tiger and the poodle. That's how the Middle East, unfortunately, see the battle between, the battlefield between Russia, and Obama. You can see from, all the cartoons, and you can see they fighting each other instead of trying to saving Syria. A little bit about 50 Shades of Moderation. Well, I can tell you from the 157 rebel groups in Syria, none of them almost are moderate. We have a lot of Salafi jihadist group. From 157 group, you're probably going to have a second Afghanistan and not a liberal democracy the day after. So I know there's a lot of conversation about it. You can see from the cartoons, who are you, a moderate wolf? And you can see a lot about, there's a lot of conversation with inside about who's moderate and who's not and what we're going to see the day after. I'll finish with a little bit with the refugees. So as I told you, and that's you need to know, majority of them are coming from an Assad-held area. As long as we're going to see the barrel bombs, we'll see more refugees in Europe. And I can give you this math. 10 barrel bombs in Syria equal 10,000 refugees in Europe. Do the math, and you'll know how Europe will look in 2016.
Thank you, Orit. This was,
you.
wow, Hollywood meets a panelist.
Yeah, brought Hollywood to the Middle East a little bit.
Straight over to Ukraine. Anna, to you.
Very much. We will straight to Russia, but Russia is engaging in two conflicts nowadays. I mean, Ukraine and Syrian one, because last year decision of starting Air Force war campaign in Syria also reflects in social media, in Russian propaganda. I think that it's also from the very beginning. It's also very we have to stress on the very beginning that Russia is using plenty of kinds of media, starting from TV, which is perfect tool of propaganda, ending on social media. I also will include Facebook, will include Odnoklasniki, I will include Vkontakte, I will also include YouTube, Twitter. As such, especially is very visible during, it was and is visible during the conflict in Donbass, in Ukraine. Also plenty of caricatures showing, for instance, the invasion on Crimea, the annexation of Crimea, the whole process in Donbass, then nowadays in Syria. But what may be interesting also for Poles, that some kind of troll using Polish with, how to say, very Russian manner, we can observe some social media websites connected with Donetsk People Republic, Lugansk People Republic. Also there were some websites in Facebook, for instance, about Polish Lviv, Polish Vilnius, which was a tool, how to say, to quarrel Poles and Ukrainians, Poles as, and Poland as a country who support Ukraine for the very beginning. So I will give the floor for Anastasia, who probably will also say us how Russia uses its propaganda in both spheres. I mean, in Ukraine, connected with Ukraine, also connected with the whole, how to say, post-Soviet Republic, because it's very connected with each other. Nowadays, for instance, the Baltic states are also a target of Russian propaganda, also due to the situation in Ukraine and the situation in Syria, and probably also this game of who is having more succeeded. For instance, according to official data of Russian military service, they destroyed during this 3 months of Air Force campaign in Syria. They destroyed 8,500 of targets. They say that majority of them belong to ISIS, but for instance, according to the data of the US, just 10% of them were ISIS and 90% were other rebels who fight against Assad regime. Anastasia, the floor is yours.
Thank you. Now it works. So maybe I will start from the end and give a little bit answer to Orit, because her presentation were very specific, and we have now new trends which could correspond somehow with it. First of all, I will have no presentation, and I believe it has some symbolic idea, because what we have seen about Syria, we have seen a very serious issues. We have tragedy, cartooned and Hollywooded to be a show. And what we have in Russia, we have completely opposite picture. We have the Hollywood, some completely imagined stories, some fiction stories, which tried to be shown as reality and tried to be shown as tragedy. And that was completely what was mainstream from propaganda sources during Ukrainian conflict. And that's why now, when Russian people see the pictures, cartoons, news from Syria, they really think about this in the manner like Putin has told in December during his press conference. He told that Syria is just a place for free of charge trainings for Russian army, and this is not about war, this is not about, he didn't tell this, but continuing this idea, we could see that for Russians, it's not about the life of people, it's not about the tragedy, it's not about all these things which Orit has shown us. But it's just about some stories, it's just about fiction, it's just about some new novel which Russia starts coming from Ukraine to Syria. And now, if you ask Russian people, they will not be able to answer you in reality manner. They will have all this mythology which they which they have taken from Ukraine, and now they continue using, thinking and speaking about Syria. That's why maybe it's very symbolic that I have no images and I have no pictures, and I will try to explain you what is the reality of Putin's and Russian propaganda, of Putin, Kremlin propaganda. So, in fact, in Russia, everything is not reality, if you just look to mass media, if you just look to some social media, if you just look at some, not in life, not in field research, but if you try to do some desk research. The speeches, the media news, some media analytics, everything, it's not the reality. It's just some story, it's just some fiction. And in fact, the underground, the reality is always about some money, about some profit, about some economic, personal economic profit for people in Kremlin. So basically, the war in Ukraine and all the conflict in Ukraine, in Crimea, was started only because it was the only way to keep the informational sources, to keep the Kremlin sources and Kremlin domination in media during the time of economic crisis, during the time when people starting being not very satisfied with their level of life. Changing the whole informational agenda inside Russia from economic, from social issues, from lifestyle, from level of economic lifestyle of people to some global ideological, some nationalistic mainstream of war with Ukraine, of conflict between nations, of geopolitical aspects was a thing to change, to stop talking about things which are not profitable for Putin and for Kremlin. So starting from this, Kremlin began work in this propaganda manner, and from step by step they go there more deep, and they like this game. And now they even believe this game by themselves. As Anne-Marie has told about the recent social media sources about Polish Lviv and Polish Ukrainian territories, it's also the part of this picture of Kremlin, because there are a lot of people inside Kremlin who really believe, and they have some partners in Poland, in Ukraine, who also try to persuade them in this, and they are happy to persuade them and to take money in exchange to this, that Ukraine is, the question of Ukraine is completely decided by by Western countries, and the federalization of Ukraine is just several steps in future, and after that Poland will take, with pleasure, will take the part of Ukraine, and this will be the finish of Ukraine as an independent state. Also, they believe that Romania is looking to the part of Ukraine as well, and Poland, and it's just a point of negotiation with Obama and Merkel. So this is not a fairy tale for people in Russia, but this is a reality of Kremlin's brains. So they really believe this. And I know people who persuaded me that this is the reality. And Polish people are happy to take Ukraine back. So that's this propaganda game made a bad joke with people inside Kremlin, because they now believe the things which are not reality. And they really live in this alternative reality. The worst thing in this, that people in Russia in majority also live in this alternative reality, and often they couldn't understand what is going on and why, for example, some people from Europe blaming Russia in some bad things, because they are sure that they do all their best to keep world in this peace in this world, and to bring peace to Ukraine, which is almost destroyed, to bring peace to Syria, which is almost destroyed. And for them, partly it is some kind of Hollywood movie, partly it's some point to discuss and argument which is with each other during some parties, but in fact they couldn't understand why Russia looks as some kind of bear, wild bear, like it is, for example, in this cartoon. So this is a second point. And the last one, which is not specifically about social media, but about propaganda in a whole, that in fact all the propaganda instruments made the picture, informational and media picture in Russia is not real, not only inside Kremlin, pro-Kremlin news websites and sources, but also inside independent sources, media sources. Because even independent journalists, they are under this influence, and they try to be not to be marginalized, but they try to be and not to be stigmatized by majority of people. They try to be relevant to the opinion, majority of opinions, and they work and they give and interpret the information and facts in the way which for us, for example, here looks not reliable and not adequate. And they even couldn't understand this. When you speak with Russian journalists, even with independent journalists, they couldn't understand why they are not right to interpret these facts like they do. So we should understand, and in fact we communicate with people who are not live in, who don't have real picture. And it's very important when, for example, Russian and Ukrainian journalists communicate with each other, because Ukrainian journalists, they try to give their picture and they couldn't understand why Russian part couldn't, even independent part of journalists, they couldn't understand and think about this and just try to argue with them. So now about social media. Interesting fact, which probably could be interesting for you, that for Russia, WhatsApp Messenger became very popular, especially in Muslim parts, especially in Northern Caucasus. So all the alternative agenda to Kremlin and to Kadyrov, for example, in Chechnya, are coming through WhatsApp, because it's also a point where diaspora communicates with people inside the Northern Caucasus Republic. Even more, they use WhatsApp and they use Skype for some religious procedures. And Northern Caucasus is a territory when Muslim and religion is becoming not a source of ideology, but it's source of justice. So Islamic judge is the only independent and free of charge or cheap judge for people, for regular citizens of Dagestan, of Chechnya, of Ingushetia. So they use it. So they use, they are Islamic, not from their mind and from their ideology from the beginning, but from this justice point. And only then there are different flows and different influences, ideological influence coming into their mind, including the ISIS. And ISIS now is actively recruit people in Northern Caucasus, and people from Northern Caucasus are coming to Syria to fight with ISIS, and then they are coming back. And this point is more and more important for Russia in future, because people who are coming after ISIS back to Northern Caucasus, they are very different from those who, for example, fought in Chechnya 10 years ago or 15 years ago. They have other practices, they have better techniques, better instruments, and better understanding how influence not only through weapon, but also through ideology and through social media and through propaganda. This is also a very important point about Russia and about Syria and about ISIS. So, and the main fact about Syria now coming from Kremlin, that they couldn't tell and couldn't answer, in fact, what they are fighting for and what they are fighting against. Because starting from the beginning, they told that they are fighting against ISIS, but also they told that they are helping Assad, but then they were caught in this mess, and also this maps which showed that they didn't fight ISIS, and also they told first that they fight with rebels. And now they are trying to tell that they're not fighting with rebels, they are giving some weapon to rebels, even. It was even Putin who told. And also they fight against ISIS, but with Assad, and also against Turkish. So people, in fact, they are tired of understanding what is going on in Syria, and they try to keep this idea that it's just some kind of training. And the final point, how, in fact, how Kremlin and how the propaganda works inside social media, outside, not in traditional media, but in social media. First of all, of course, as you mentioned, these specific paid trolls who are working from 9 till 6 p.m., from 9 a.m. till 6 p.m., specifically posting different links and posting different comments in different social media sources. And first it was, first journalists could get the inside information from this fabric of trolls, how they called now in Russia, specifically one in Olgin in St. Petersburg. It was quite popular discussion about how it worked, because people there got not big salary, but it was some journalists, some students of journalism coming mostly from small cities, and this was like a first job for them. They came there and they posted different links. So journalists, St. Petersburg journalists could discover this fabric, could discover their office, could discover how the procedures, how they work. And at this moment, the experts could understand that it was not only about paid commenters, so it not was only about people who posted some comments and links, but it was about fake mass media, mostly in Russian language and mostly for his Ukrainian servers. So nowadays, if you look at Russian segment of Facebook or to Vkontakte, Russian social media, or even to Odnoklassniki also, you could see a lot of links from UA in Russian language, and in majority it is fake mass media which given you some fake information and some fake news, and it is done only, and it is disseminated by these trolls, but not only, because people are taking some sensational news, also disseminate them in social media, and the only task for all this campaign was to discredit social media as a source of information. Because before the starting of Ukrainian story, social media, especially Facebook, but Vkontakte also, was a territory of opposition, was a territory of discussion, more or less, and it was a territory where the free and real information and facts could come from. So the task of these paid trolls was not to take this information out of the context, not to spoil, but to give a lot of different facts which are fake, just to spoil all the discussion, just to spoil all the source. And in fact, for Russian sources, for Russian people, the picture from the social media, the picture from Twitter or from Facebook is not a fact of, for example, and not a It's not a fact about, for example, settling of Russian troops to Ukraine, to Donbass, or not a supportive fact to prove that it was Russian books to kill the people in Malaysia and board. So this is the real goal, the real objective, not just to give another facts, not to bring any discussion, but just to discredit any discussion, to discredit any information from this media, and bring other sources as verified, like television, for example. So the last point, which
make it short.
Yeah, the last point about these trolls. That the interesting fact was when experts, social media experts, started analyze and calculate and looked at the places where these people are posting from, and they could see that majority during some campaigns and during some special mass media social media campaigns about some issue, pro-Kremlin, the majority of posts, majority of tweets, majority of Facebook, Vkontakte posts are coming from 2-3 locations inside Russia. So with this they could discover not only this troll fabric in St. Petersburg, but also several in Moscow Oblast and one more in Urals. It was It is about how social media helps to understand where propaganda and where is facts, where is reality, where are people, and where are no people, but only the fake. So now we can see that for Russian people inside, the story about Donbass, the story about Ukraine, the story about Syria, the story about geopolitical wins of Russia, it's in social media it looks like some Hollywood, because they don't trust any information source, and this brings all the discussions about Syria, for example, today, all the serious discussions in the UN, in Europe, for Russians useless, because they couldn't understand why you are so care about these stories, because it's for them it's the same fake like it was in Ukraine. So this, I believe that this is a big tragedy for us, for Russia, because they couldn't understand where is the serious points, where are movies.
Thank you very much, Anastasia, for very interesting presentation. Probably we will switch to our audience, and if you want to ask some questions, please introduce yourself. There is a microphone, which probably Ola will spread. So, great.
Hello, my name is Thomas Berg. I'm from here, from PISM. I'm an intern here, and I have one question to you. You mentioned there are activists and rebels in Syria who are using social media to disseminate the information through the world. And I'm wondering if you think ISIS developed some kind of tools. ISIS developed some kind of tools to maybe infiltrate them or to fight them somehow, to uncover them, and to stop them from doing that. Because I'm just wondering if ISIS is also, they are finding on this information front, like on Twitter accounts and so on, but also if they are using some IT techniques to uncover them and to know who they are, and because they are anonymous, I guess, all the activists. Yeah.
Thanks. Can we take a couple before it gets back to you?
Hi, I'm Agata Helena-Skóra from the Human Rights Commission of the Polish Bar. I have a very specific question. In the previous war conflict, when media was used, I'm talking about Rwanda or the Second World War, because those are those conflicts that rendered jurisprudence concerning the limits of the freedom of expression in the media, and is constituting either persecution as crimes against humanity or incitement to genocide by an excess of hate speech. So you're observing the social media right now, and this is a completely new platform when hate speech is spread out by either pro-Assad forces or ISIS. And we could say that might be what they do, they are committing international crimes by filling with the requirements and thresholds of persecution as crimes against humanity or incitement to genocide. But what you observe in the social media is actually what we would previously in the cases that were investigated would look at the behavior of the people. So would you say through the observation of the reactions of the people that you could through them see that the message of hate speech is being well received and the people are acting on it?
Before it gets back to you, I just want to add one more question to you, Anastasia, because I was hoping there would be a little bit more about Donbass in your talk. By analogy to the situation in Syria, in Donbass you have just the people who still live there, you have the rebels, you have the Kiev narrative, and you have the Moscow narrative. And I wonder how these four players play out in the social media, or the four narratives, or are there as many narratives? So just, you know, after Orit answers, I'd like you to answer that. If there are no other questions at this point from the audience. Okay, yeah, let's have another round. Sure.
Okay, so I'll start. It's okay? Yeah, I'll start with that. As I said, I'm not researching ISIS means and ways, so I can't tell you if they know how to track the other rebels within social media. I have to say, majority of them wants to be exposed because they want to attract recruitment of people, and they want to be exposed to people to be able to ask them questions. And so I know everybody thinks that everything is conspiracy and everything happening behind the scene, but one thing I can say about social media, and it's kind of, I want to say, it's creature. They work 24/7. They want to be exposed because they want their voices and their opinion will affect. If you want to be undercover, your effect is becoming minimized. Once you're exposed, yes, it's two-way swords, because once you're exposed, you're also exposed to strikes and stuff like that. But for them, because they're tiny, even though we think they are huge, they need to look more, they need to look bigger than what they are. If they'll start to hide, I mean, they lost the game. So I don't know if they have a means and technology to track other rebels. I know rebels, we can see them very much off. I mean, you know, I think even in the last experience that we have when Russia struck the head of the Jaish al-Islam rebel group, Zaran Alush, accidentally, and 5 around him, I think everybody knew he's giving a ceremony in the headquarters in Duma. It wasn't even a secret because, I mean, even Assad needs them if he wants to survive, because they are the alternatives. So he wants to see it's either me or them. What do you prefer? So I don't know to tell you if technology-wise they're tracing them each other, if they have the tools. I don't know to tell you, to be honest. Regarding your question, the answer is no. They don't succeed with the local communities. And how do we know it? Because the most of the rebel groups and with ISIS, 90% are foreign fighters, not from within Syria even. We're going to Al-Nusra Forum or Al-Qaeda affiliated, it's 65, 70% foreigners. The majority don't want to join the extreme radical groups. We do see in Khar el-Sham, and I'm sorry that I'm dropping the names of the group, but I hope the big one we know, Khar el-Sham and Jaish al-Islam, more locals. So the more violent and radical you are, the less you'll succeed to recruit from within your territory. You will succeed to recruit, immigrant, desperate, individual, lone wolves kind of type. We always thought that they're taking kind of similar-minded Salafis, jihadists. The answer is no. We thought that they are trying to recruit what we're calling Muslim Brotherhood that failed to succeed, so they're trying to radicalize them. Yes, but this is not the majority. Even people from as I said, from the places they want to occupy, they try to recruit them before they're entering. Didn't succeed so well. The majority are lone wolf from places which, usually, by the way, not poor, educated, middle class, urban, youngs, who like these kicks, as I said, Hollywood movies, kicks and you know, they don't find jobs, they're looking for this activity. Not everybody's becoming a fighter, some of them going to the media arms and so on. So the more radical you are, the more violent and the more violent movies you have, less local community will join you. Absolutely no, and we need to say it's only 1% from the Sunni. They kill 8 times more Sunnis than any other minorities. If you ask me, for the Muslim Sunnis community, it's in the long term, it will be the best thing that can happen to them, because the majority of Muslims now are fighting ISIS and fighting the ideology, and now start to create the counter narrative to ISIS, because it will have to come from within. Anyway, not from USA, you know, from the US or from Europe or whatever. It needs to come from within the counter-narrative. So, yes, they need to fight those radical kind of elements that coming from within, the Wahhabis, you know, ideology and so on. It will take time. But yes, the answer is no. I mean, it's the grotesque and this porn movie. I mean, seriously, the majority is completely repulsed by this.
Speaking about Donbass, first of all, it is not like in Syria, which it could be bordered. This is Donbass, and this is about Donbass and coming from Donbass in social media, and this is outside. I believe they better speak about Ukraine in whole, because the fight in social media between pro-Kremlin commenters and anti-Kremlin commenters or pro-Ukrainian commenters are coming in social media, and it's not so coming in Donbass, in the territory of Donbass. The majority of commenters are outside from Donbass, from both sides. Interesting fact that when I told you about this localization research, it was found that part of anti-Kremlin, pro-Ukrainian commenters were also coming from the same localizations from these troll institutions inside Russia. That means that this level of aggression and level of conflict between Russia and Ukraine, between Russian people and Ukrainian people in social media are coming not from reality also, but also moderated by Kremlin, moderated by these propaganda sources. So if you see, for example, in Facebook or in Twitter or in other social network media, you can see these some comments, anti-Russian, some kind of aggressive comments. You couldn't be sure that this is real person from Ukraine, for example, or it is a fake person working in this troll fabric somewhere inside Russia. And again, the main task, the main objective also for people in Donbass, for people in Crimea, for people in Ukraine and for people in Russia is not to fight to each other, but to bring more mess and more misunderstanding to all the social media space, to discredit the social media sources and internet as it is. And this is the main idea of Putin himself. He doesn't like internet, he doesn't understand how it works, and he really thinks that it's some kind of garbage with lots of different garbage information. Yes, with different buttons. So he understands it as it is. A lot of people inside Kremlin understands it as it is. And that's why they try to bring this perception to people also. Interesting point that I know several civic actors, journalists who tried from Russia, who tried to get the direct contact, a direct communication with local citizens of Donetsk, of Lugansk, during this hot period of the situation there, just to get a real understanding of what is going on inside. And in fact, when they got in touch with the people, local citizens, they tried to find them through social networks, but in fact those were not people with a lot of friends, with a lot of posts and a lot of links in the accounts, but the people who sometimes from time to time posted something personal, they got the reliable for them information, and they started to help to local citizens, to people directly from people to people. They came inside this territory without without coverage from, for example, separatists or from some international NGOs, but they tried to get inside and to get in communication with local people. And this was the only way to get the truth, to get the real information. Because all the pictures, all the cartoons, all the videos which were posted in social media from the side of separatists, from some side, I don't know. I couldn't tell that it is Ukrainians because I am not really sure that this is pro-Ukrainians, Ukrainian activists. I told you that it's difficult to understand if they are working for money from Moscow or they are posting some real facts. But in fact, all these pictures which are disseminated and which were disseminated in social media, they were not really truths. They were not really facts. They were just fakes. This is the point. The point is that there is no real information. In fact, if you look at from the top, you should dig and dig to get the truth.
Thanks. Let's get more questions maybe. There was one at the back. We don't have much time. Final minute.
Yeah, I'm Sudarshan from India. Thank you so much for a nice presentation, taking from the ground zero of your experience. My question is, do you think that the external powers role in Syria, where they don't enter into the Assad issue or with the ISIS issue, but they attack the rebels, what you said in your presentation, do you think that this kind of propagating in the social media is a backing of the external powers to make their presentation? I mean, are these external powers taking the much advantage of propagating the issues what are taking place in Syria through this social media?
I guess, in other words, are outside actors also involved in this social media war within Syria, right?
Yeah.
The answer is absolutely yes. I mean, whoever is outside of social media and everyone who has interest in Syria has a part of the game. I can tell you that I on a daily basis, I introduce myself to the trolls, the Russian trolls. They're doing a crazy life to me, yeah. They now found social media, so now you have a lot in Syria, not only regarding social media, it's supposed to empower yourself. You're supposed to traject power through it. So Russia is now trying to show, how powerful whatever they're doing in Syria. So they're putting so many pictures of missiles, and I know it from Israel. When every war we're putting the F-16 in the airs and stuff like that. I mean, this is like a war porn. So now that's what we're getting from this position. The rebels putting more and more, unfortunately, bodies. A lot of kids, they also, it's not because it's not the reality. I think the reality is terrible enough, but sometimes when you're trying to attract attention with all this information is running around, you try to think what will attract the end of the war and what will bring it, so sometimes they think that if they'll put horrific movies and pictures of kids being blown, then it will attract more attention. Not because there isn't such, but because they want to put it forward. They think that it might attract more attention to Syria. Some Syrians using the tools just to announce their family and to communicate with their communities more and more. It really depends who you are. The U.S. is trying to show how they finish the oil supplies much more because they're doing only airstrikes, and ISIS will never be able to. They can kind of degrade them, but not ultimately destroy them from the air, nobody will be able to finish the war from the air. So they try to focus how they finish the supply lines of the oil and stuff like that. They're putting a lot of kind of pictures of that. You'll see from CENTCOM and so on, a lot of pictures like that. So yeah, foreign players, Saudis trying to portray Iran as the octopus is like trying to occupy now, you know, the Iranian hegemony in the Middle East. Not that it's not true, but that's why they're putting the focus and the propaganda on this one. Iranian trying to show that Saudi is Israel proxy, so they're trying to show how Saudi is interfering and sponsoring ISIS in Syria. A lot of a lot of crossing images that you have, but a lot of real-time pictures also is coming from the ground. I'll say one more word regarding this. I know we're talking about fact and propaganda. I think the fine line between what is real and what is perception is almost erased completely. And I can tell you sometimes in today's world, it's not even important. We are doing the, dividing it between what's real. But if your kid's seeing these images and he thinks that it's real and he's acting upon it, then it's real. I know, remember when I showed you the movie about the Jordanian pilot. In the reality, what happened, that they first killed him with a bullet, and then they did the production. From the movie, you can think that they burned him alive. The reality that they killed him first. They are barbarian, but I guess they decided to kill him first. Now, we saw only the movie. We don't know what happened in the past. And people tell me, but this is not the reality. The reality, blah, blah, blah. If 150 million watched it as it is, it's reality for them. So somebody told me that Superman is not real. Okay. But, 100 million people kids wants to believe, or Frozen is not real. But from one girl of my best friend think that Frozen is real. So for her, it's real. What can I say? She thinks that this is her heroine and that's it. And she sings Frozen every day. So to give you the fine line, I guess, between what's facts and what sometimes even the perception and the images becoming reality. And sometimes you go to war because of pictures and stuff like that. So I don't know, how much we can define. Yeah.
Thanks. I guess we don't have much time, unfortunately. We don't have any more time, as a matter of fact. Thanks very much. I guess you deserve the words of utmost respect for keeping sane, while analyzing and receiving all this information from social media. It seems like you can easily become paranoid. So thank you very much, not only for your talks, great presentations, but also for doing the jobs. Thank you. And thanks for coming.
Thank you so much.